Hello and welcome to this virtual roundtable from Foodservice Consultants Society International, FCSI, focusing on a topic with significant relevance to our industry, innovation in specialty ice. I'm Michael Jones from Progressive Content and editorial director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This roundtable series is currently sponsored by Manitowoc Ice, part of Pentair, and will address how innovation is shaping the future of specialty ice programs for food service operators. From understanding evolving equipment design that suits the changing beverage needs of customers, to overcoming installation challenges and meeting stricter regulatory requirements and technical concerns such as maintenance and filtration, this roundtable will explore how ice machines are changing to better suit the current and future demands of operators. I'm delighted to be joined by our expert panelists, a highly experienced food service consultant and a senior executive from Pentair who specializes in this area. I will ask each of them to introduce themselves and also tell us a little bit about their area of expertise. So Cassie, can we start with you first, please?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Cassie Johnston. I am a product manager here at Manitowoc Ice, now part of Pentair. So I've been with Manitowoc Ice for 9 years, so in the food service industry that whole time at Manitowoc Ice. The products I cover include our under-counter machines, Flake and Nugget, and then of course our new specialty line of ice machines that includes our new Crystal Craft Premier, which is a 1.5-inch square cube machine, and also our 1-inch square cube machine. So happy to be here today and talk about ice.
Wonderful, thank you, Cassie. And Alec, please.
Hi, Michael. Thank you, Cassie. I'm Alec Bauer. I'm the principal and creative director for Kitchen, Restaurant, and Bar Specialists. We are an FCSI consultant. I'm located here in Burlington, Vermont. I run a distributed team. We have project management and design outside of Baltimore, Austin, and St. Louis. We operate predominantly in traditional hospitality sector, so restaurants, clubs, hotels, a lot of standalone culinary, chef-driven operations. We do some regional chains, things like that, but predominantly we're in traditional hospitality. We work in the occasional higher education project or public school, university, workplace dining. But even those are mostly ones that are real food forward, food and beverage focused, things of that nature. And I guess I started KRBS 13 years ago after I was in the industry as a chef for a long time and then worked for another series of consultants and then got out and started on my own. Here we are.
Fantastic. Alec, Cassie, welcome. Thank you very much for that. Let's set the scene. Cassie, if I could go to you first, please. Can you just give us a brief overview of the key role, the primary role that ice plays or should play in a modern food service operation?
Yeah, so ice is such an important ingredient in a beverage, and it's really important in any food service operation. So ice is one of those things that's oftentimes forgotten about, except when you don't have ice. And so, they buy an ice machine and it's, ice machine's working, they don't think about it. But then the minute it goes down, that's when you think, oh my gosh, ice is used everywhere, from beverages to also, to cooling down certain processes when making food and things like that. And then you get into the topic of specialty ice. And specialty ice is really something that can make a drink and take it to the next level. So especially we see this trend towards craft cocktails and, bars are charging $15, $20 for a drink. And so if you're charging that much for a drink, you don't want to be putting, small half dice, broken up pieces of ice. You want to be putting in there a large cube, a crystal clear cube, something that's going to enhance the beverage, add to the beverage, has a slower melting rate, and things like that. So ice is, everywhere in food service and plays such an important role, even though it's oftentimes forgotten about.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cassie. Alec, Cassie talked there about how specialty ice can enhance a beverage, how it can take a drink to the next level. From your perspective as a consultant, why does having specialty ice as an offering for customers really matter? And why do you advise your operator clients to up their ice game?
It's a combination of factors. I think Cassie's spot on with the assessment that it ups the wow factor. It increases the sort of visual appeal, especially you're selling an $18 or $25 or $45 glass of aged whiskey. You're not going to pour that over some less than crescent ice from a traditional machine. It's just not. It's not what you're going to do as an operator working in today's marketplace. Some time ago, maybe, or a long time ago, that would never happen. It was only giant blocks of ice that were cracked at the surface of the bar. But Now it's almost maybe not table stakes, but it's to be expected at this point that if you're in a nice establishment, if you're spending good money on a quality spirit or a high quality cocktail, that the ice is going to measure up to the same quality as the rest of the ingredients in the drink or what have you.
Fantastic, Alec. Thank you. Cassie, could you expand on that a little bit then and tell us how, from your perspective, specialty ice can really elevate a bar program? How can it make it unique?
Yeah, so you want to think of ice as an ingredient. And so that's where having that specialty ice comes in. And so if I could talk a little bit about one of my products, so we do have a machine that makes a large cube. And so this just also then makes it easier on the operator. So currently there's a couple different ways that bar operators can get specialty ice. They can make it out of ice molds, we see that. They can buy it, or you can get it from a machine. And so we do have a machine that makes a 1.5-inch square cube. And so that just adds to the ease of the bar program versus having to make it or buy it and spend a lot of money. By having a larger cube, melts slower and adds to the experience of the beverage. Also, you go to a craft cocktail bar, you get your drink, and if it just has normal ice in it, you don't really think anything of it. You get a drink with a large cube in there. It's kind of like that wow factor of, oh, this looks different. It looks cool. Maybe take a picture, put it on social media, things like that. And so if you are, in a bar application and charging a lot of money for a beverage, you want to have that large specialty ice as that kind of like wow factor to your drinks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cassie. Alec, thinking from your view as a consultant, do you have examples of maybe some clients you've worked with or some projects that you've worked on where that kind of wow factor that Cassie's just described has had a notable impact on creating that unique experience for a customer, or even a notable impact on sales?
Yeah, I would say to counter that a little bit, it's less at this point, and from the consulting and design side, I would say it's less about creating a unique experience and more about keeping up. The vast majority of our clients have some kind of specialty ice program in place, whether it's just a standard 1-inch, 1-inch or 1 1/4, or as Cassie mentioned, the Manitowoc 1.5-inch machine. As an absolute expectation that we would have one in the bar program. We've had some clients over the years get pretty far down the rabbit hole in terms of buying the large block makers. There's just a few manufacturers left who continue to make the 125-pound, what we typically see these days used for carving ice for large carved roosters or what have you at a banquet or a large buffet or something like that. But there are vendors in some cities around that continue to make the giant block ice and will sell very large format cubes for folks to carve at the bar or in their as part of their prep. The machines, as Cassie noted, have made things so much easier to maintain a really solid, very consistent and reliable specialty ice program using some of these higher end machines that are historically a little bit more finicky than a very typical crescent machine or dice or even nugget machine. But it's definitely something that we have in just about all of our projects. And I would recommend anybody who's not looked at the variety of specialty ice makers in the market to go ahead and do so, because there's some great stuff out there.
Fantastic. Thank
Yeah,
you,
and if I could add on to that a little bit. So when we think about specialty ice makers, that's kind of what they are. They're specialty. So you're going to have, your ice maker that makes your large cubes only use, for certain drinks. And then you're going to have, another machine such as, your crescent cuber, half dice cuber machine that you're using for everything else. And so you're kind of saving that ice for those special drinks to make them unique while you have your other ice machine kind of for everything else.
Brilliant.
That's how, sorry, Mike, I got to add on to that. That's how we wind up with 3 or 4 different ice machines on any given project, or we run into a situation where we have to prioritize, we have to find a balance between priorities when we have a small space, a compact kitchen, and it's running a quality bar, as well as needing ice for the occasional oyster display, or needing ice for blanching and shocking vegetables in the back of the house, or cooling stocks in the back of the house. And we don't have room for 2 or 3 machines. And so we're kind of constantly prioritizing between the specialty ice program, which we really want and really need out in the bar program, but that's not necessarily the best ice for cooling stocks or for shocking green vegetables after cooking them, because we're using super high quality ice that melts slowly and looks beautiful while you're chilling vegetables in the back of house. but it's not, when you only have 400 pounds in a day out of that machine, you don't necessarily want to use it cooling stocks. You need to put it in the drinks.
Thank you, Alec. Cassie, to Alec's point there, he talks about the need to balance priorities and also having different setups for different needs. Can you talk about key trends then that are shaping that side of a food service operation? What are some of the key trends that you and your team are seeing with regards to specialty ice?
Yeah, so definitely the trend we've been seeing, that everyone's getting into is the large cubes. So that's why we came out with our 1.5-inch cubes. Some of the competitors have a larger, 2-inch cube, as well as a 1-inch cube. So kind of everywhere in between that 1 to 2-inch. But that's really what customers expect, is seeing, that large cube in their glass. There is other shapes out there, such as, spheres you can get in ice machines now. But really, it's the cubes, the large cubes that the customers are demanding in their drinks. And like I said, that's kind of just what they're expecting when they order, a very expensive, whiskey on the rocks or something like that.
Great stuff, thank you. And Alec, how have you seen those trends change with regards to the needs of your customers over the years?
I would say it's definitely. I'd agree with what Cassie noted there. It's definitely a trend towards. I mean, again, not even a trend really. This is just how the industry is right now within the traditional hospitality, higher end hotel, restaurant, independent operation sector. We're not seeing this necessarily in the national chains, at least not yet. Although as the machines become more reliable and more ubiquitous, I'm sure we will start seeing them in your fast casual bar programs. We'll have a lot more of this. It won't be limited just to the higher end, but we're still seeing a pretty sizable utilization of silicone molds for different shapes that just aren't yet really regularly available by machine. Now, whether that's a Collins glass with a long skinny spear of ice that's maybe 1 inch square but 4 inches or 6 inches long is definitely something we see a fair amount of. The sphere machines are available in a few places. There's one manufacturer that I'm aware of that's begun selling them here in the States. They're pretty cool. They don't seem quite as exacting as the square ones are right now, in terms of how they in my experience, they've tended to look a little bit raggedy. Not raggedy, but a little shaggier around the edges. It's hard to say edges on a sphere, but not quite as perfectly smooth on the exterior of that. But I think the technology is getting there, certainly in terms of making those consistent and reliable. But a lot of silicone molds still, and we're seeing it's all over my social media feeds and whatnot, is the various little home ice silicone molds or styrofoam molds or things that people have been using for some time that have gotten better and better in the absence of having a 2-inch square machine that will make these cubes reliably, or even a 1.5-inch square machine. The game on the silicone mold side has gotten pretty advanced as well, in terms of there are various inserts that help keep the water insulated to get the impurities out, get a really nice clear cube. We've seen a fair number of fairly robust establishments basing their large specialty ice program around high quality filtration and then molds that allow for them to do that in just a series of freezers. Although it can be demanding on your average reach-in freezer, if you load that up with silicone molds with even cold water, it's a lot of heat to get out of that box to get those frozen. Those refrigerators, reach-ins and whatnot are not generally engineered to freeze ice. To hold ice that's previously frozen, sure. To freeze ice, wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
Thank you, Alec. One of the factors that Alec mentioned there, Cassie, was the need for high quality filtration. What are some of the main elements that you would highlight for an operator to factor in before they invest in an ice maker, a machine for specialty ice?
Yeah, bringing up filtration is great. So we don't make operators put filtration on the ice machines, but it's very highly, highly recommended, especially when, you're trying to make a large cube. You want it to be crystal clear. And the way we make our ice, with how we circulate water and everything, they do freeze pretty clear, but having filtration just ensures that you're getting that really clear cube with really high quality water. So filtration is definitely key, especially in any ice machine, but especially on these specialty ice makers. So filtration, we talked before about space. So, you need to make sure you have the space for the machine. You need a water drain hookup, and then also room for the machine to breathe. Alec was saying about how these operators are wanting to put, 2 or 3 or 4 machines, and then they just, have to find the space for it. And it's very important to have enough space around the machine to be able for it to breathe so it can keep up with production is one thing as well. And then, when an operator is starting to look at ice machines, kind of the first question you want to ask them is, what are you using the ice for? For a bar program, that's when you're going to look at, adding that square cube along with, half dice cuber, crescent cuber, something like that. If it's just, a lower end, bar or, coffee shop, things like that, they can get away with just like a half dice cuber, things like that. But the most important thing is to figure out what they're using the ice for. And so then you can help them to decide what type of machine, what type of ice is best for that application.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cassie. Alec, is there any additional factors that you consider on behalf of your clients?
How much ice they need for sure is a big one.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Once you figure out what type of ice, then how much is needed?
Yeah, I mean it's a rabbit hole. How many different kinds of ice do you need? How much of each kind of ice? Do you have a raw bar? Do you have a cocktail program? You need ice for chilling stock in the back. You need all different kinds of ice, and then somebody of course wants your really robust bar programs, really like wide-ranging ones, are going to need the large squares for spirit-driven drinks, smaller squares for mixed cocktails, nugget ice for swizzles and juleps and things like that. And then you're going to have a Collins ice, which is again at this point really only made in molds. And then you got to decide what they want to use in their water glass. And then we're always balancing, like, do we really need another kind of ice just for water, or can we just use a chilled water system? If we're in Los Angeles or Miami or Austin, my gosh, it's in the triple digits every day down there lately. I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds of ice for a large restaurant or large hotel. Machines really get taxed. They really get pushed. We're stacking sometimes 2 or 3 heads onto a bin to get the production going and match the size of the outlet. I'd say sizing quantity of ice is really a really key factor.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alec. Cassie, let's talk about how Alec made that point earlier about it's not even so much about trying to stay ahead of these trends, it's about keeping up. So how is innovation shaping how is technology basically informing all of this and able to answer all of these queries and questions that for operators' needs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we were developing our square cube ice machine, we kind of looked at what was already on the market. A lot of those square cube machines out there, they were kind of using more outdated technology. The technology had been around, since, the 80s and 90s and hadn't really been updated. And sometimes it was known to be kind of unreliable, but people were buying them because they wanted that square cube. And so when we set out to make our square cube, we looked at how they designed theirs and then how we could improve upon that design. And so with our large cube machine, we actually have a dual evaporator system, and we're freezing that cube from the outside in and the inside out. And so we're able to get a really clear piece of ice, and then there's no moving parts in the machine. So, we were looking at how can we make this easier for an owner operator, to be able to use the machine, not have as much downtime. We also integrated water filtration on that machine as well. So, before I talked about the importance of water filtration. So on our square cube machine, we do have it integrated to ensure, that the water going into the machine is going to be, crystal clear to make that ice. And then you can look at some of the other trends of, developing machines for, the sphere, larger cubes as well, just to make it easier for the operators. Alec had talked about that owners are using silicone molds, and while it works, it's not great. It's time consuming. It's very difficult to get that clear ice. He's talking about the different systems they use to get clear ice. It's not easy. And so, in our industry, we're looking at ways we can develop machines that make that clear ice to make it easier for the owners and operators to start their bar programs.
Great, thank you, Cassie. Alec, do you feel like the technology is keeping up?
I think so. Although the technology on the manufacturing side, or the pace of development on the manufacturing side, is certainly slower than that on the Kickstarter aspirational side. And I think that I'm still seeing every other week, it seems like another mold system coming out means there's still there's still a part of the market that's either the home market, where we're not necessarily selling commercial machines, or bar programs that are small enough or only need a small enough amount of specialty ice where they feel they can get by with something a little more streamlined. Cassie, I agree with you. The mold systems are labor intensive. You still need dedicated equipment for freezing those things by the time all is said and done. I don't know how much you're really going to be saving either on time or space in your property, if that's what the goal is. But
yeah,
it's interesting
not to
to
mention
see.
you have to buy freezers and things like that to even store those. So it's like, yeah, how much are you really even saving
All that.
over
Yeah,
buying a machine?
yeah, and a lot of operators want to use chest freezers for those. Spoiler alert: they're not generally approved by health departments in most of America. Can't speak to the UK, Michael, but they're not approved for commercial use here in the States. Although, also spoiler alert, they are the best way to freeze ice, because you try to do that in a reach in, and you're opening the door, cold air is flowing out. You won't get clean and clear ice with no pun intended, with a sort of fractured freezing process. You want it to go nice and consistent, nice and smooth all the way through. But I see most of the technology around service, around the incorporation of QR codes and quick access for operators to see their manuals and to scan the QR code on their machine instantly. They can pull serial number, last service date, who their local service agent might be. That's one of the ways that technology has really helped the end user and operator in terms of understanding their equipment, keeping it in good shape. Again, I as Cassie noted, I totally agree. This is a huge one. If your ice machine is not in an appropriately ventilated space, it will not operate to capacity. We still frequently will put ice machines on remote refrigeration, because it limits the amount of heat or rejection into the space and keeps them operating in tip-top condition. It's more expensive on the capital side because it's more costly to install. Some manufacturers have begun moving away from using remote, or the specialty ice units are not available on remote. They're only self-contained. So it's always a little bit of balance in terms of what we can spec, but good ventilation and good clearance around these machines, keeping the vent screens clean, also super important. Basic maintenance goes a long way on ice machines. Cleanliness and basic maintenance, super important.
Fantastic. We'll get to the sanitation, the cleanliness side of things in a second. But one phrase you mentioned there, Alex, was labor intensive. Cassie, let's talk about how innovation is able to help end user operators and help answer that labor saving issue in food service at the moment. It's such a hot potato at the moment. How is, with specialty ice, how is better technology able to bring that kind of labor saving element as well?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to what I was saying before with the innovation in our machines. There's less moving parts, less downtime on the machine, and then getting a machine that makes specialty ice, you are saving that labor of having to make it. There's the whole process of you have to have someone there making that ice. So you're not, in the end, you're probably not even saving any money. So that's more specific to specialty ice, but I could talk about some of our other, ice machines, our Cuber ice machines. We do have a touchscreen display on our Cuber ice machines. So that's specific to us. And so on there's continuous operational feedback. It's going to tell you when there's something wrong with the machine. So you can get someone out there and service it before, there's a total machine shutdown, things like that. So we try to make it easy.
Thank you, Cassie. Let's stay on the subject of labour saving just for a second there, Alec. Why is labour saving generally in food service the way forward? Why has that got to be one of our biggest areas to focus on?
Two reasons. One is money and profitability. We can't operate without labor efficiency. It's just not possible in these razor-thin margin environments that most food service operations operate in. And two, we're still having, as an industry-wide challenge, still having a hard time staying staffed. And it just continues to be the new normal. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And while I won't say that the struggles that operators are going through are good, and it's a huge challenge that we deal with on the design side all the time, I think that it is in many respects a better way forward in terms of developing operations that are just leaner on a labor side as much as possible. Really, right sizing an operation is a challenge, whether it's sizing how much ice you need for an operation or how many staff you need. or how big of a facility to build. All those things factor into a lot of decisions on the design and development side, but saving on labor is just enormous. It's one of the, it's such a huge cost on the entire industry that trying to keep that in a profitable area is just so paramount.
Yeah, it's a massive challenge at the moment. Cassie, let's go back to the subject of hygiene and sanitation here. There's such scrutiny on that side of the business in recent years for obvious reasons since the pandemic. What strides have been made with regards to ice machines, specialty ice machines, for meeting these very stringent regulatory standards now?
Yeah, so sanitation is so important in ice machines. Really became a hot topic, in 2020, but really at Manitowoc Ice, it's been a focus of ours, since we started. We've always had sanitation in mind in everything we build, and our specialty ice machines are really no exception. So on our 1 square cube machine, we do have automatic cleaning. So there is a clean button on the touchpad membrane. So you're able to press and hold that for 3 seconds to initiate that clean cycle. You'll add the descaler sanitizer and it's going to automatically run through and clean and sanitize the machine. So we try to make it easy for an end user to be able to do that themselves. We also, all of our food zone components are removable without tools. So just kind of little things like that we're looking at and making sure that's incorporated in all of the machines we manufacture, because sanitation is so important. Kind of going back to before, a lot of operators buy their ice machine and forget about it. They also, forget that they need to clean it, kind of out of sight, out of mind. But sanitation is very important. So we try to make it as easy as we can to encourage end users to be able to do it, or even if you call in a service company, that it's easy for them to do it as well, because the easier the ice machine is to clean, the more often it's going to get done. So very, very important.
Great, thanks, Cassie. Alec, do you feel that the sector is generally keeping pace with meeting those sanitation requirements?
It's a good point that I think a lot of there's a fair number of operators that probably put an ice machine in and think that it's ice and that it's cold and that there won't be a sanitation issue. But counterintuitively, ice machines and lettuce are like 2 really common spots for foodborne illness because of cross-contamination. You don't do anything with that product before it goes into a drink or before it goes onto a salad. Climbing into an ice bin to clean it out, historically not the easiest thing to do. You got to burn out all the ice, and then you got to find somebody small enough to climb into the ice machine or into the bin and get it all cleaned out. The auto cleaning functions are great on all the equipment that allow that, whether that's combi ovens or ice machines or otherwise. Anytime you can automate or even make push button availability for cleaning cycles, the better off we all are for operators to stay on top of it. Also, as Cassie mentioned, the touchscreen or QR code accessibility for maintenance and for regular cleaning and for sanitizing and things like that is fantastic for operators to be able to manage those things, for managers to be able to do so. The materiality that's used inside the bins and inside the machines has improved dramatically over the last 15, 20 years in terms of bacteriostatic operation and just keeping things clean. It's surprisingly, again, counterintuitively important to look into the corners of the ice bin on a more regular basis and see what's going on there.
Great, Thank you. Cassie, you mentioned service and maintenance there and how important it is to look after these machines. Why is it so important that specialty ice machines are so much easier to maintain or repair now? What does that matter?
So just ice machines in general, maybe not necessarily even specialty ice machines, but keeping up on service and maintenance and cleaning just means the machine's going to last longer. So typical life of an ice machine is 7 to 10 years. If you don't clean it, if you don't do any maintenance, it's probably not going to last more than 5 years. And then if you keep up on that in a regular interval, it's going to make it last longer. And an ice machine's a big investment. And so by keeping up on that maintenance and cleaning, you're able to make it last longer. And so we recommend cleaning at least every 6 months. And so sometimes more in harsher environments, but if you keep up on that regular interval, your machine is going to last for longer. And then generally there's not really any required preventative maintenance other than cleaning. And as long as you keep up on that, the ice machine will usually generally continue to work well for a while.
Excellent. Thank you, Cassie. Bit of a, I guess, a side question here for you, Alec. I understand you've just returned from a trip to Japan. Can you tell us about some of the experiences you had out there with regards to specialty ice and what kind of market that looks like out there?
I found the ice in Japan to be ubiquitously amazing, like everywhere, even the small cafes, ice that goes into your that goes into your iced matcha or into your at the Starbucks in Kyoto, or where any other small what we would consider mom and pop operation on up to swanky hotel bars, all of them super great, crystal clear, very fine 90-degree edges on all their ice. I got made fun of quite a bit by family and friends for the amount of pictures I took of ice cubes in beverages, holding them outside above beverages, getting scenic shots with ice cubes in the foreground. It was kind of a mystery to me whether it was pure. And yes, I poked my head behind many counters to try to figure out what ice machines they are, what they're using. I saw a couple that I'm going to keep under wraps for the moment, so as to not spread the word on those just yet. I got to figure out if they're where they're available. But I don't know if it's the quality of the machines they have, the meticulousness with which they maintain those machines, or something to do with the water quality or filtration thereof. I didn't get, maybe it was the language barrier, but I couldn't quite get to that answer. But again, everywhere I went, it was great. And yes, in all the swanky hotel bars, they have blocks of ice on the bar that they are carving sections off of. I think that's interesting. Again, it's funny to call this 100-year-old thing a trend, but getting back to blocks of ice that you're carving into like rough-hewn shapes for specific interesting pieces of glassware or stemware or something else that is something very organic and very unique. Every piece is obviously different, but the higher end bars definitely all had spheres of ice, and they had large cubes of ice, and depending on which, I couldn't quite get which one was which for which spirit, or what the rhyme or reason was between when they were using a giant square cube versus a sphere. But it was great. Everywhere I looked, there was just wonderful ice. And nowhere was it, even in like the movie theater, there wasn't any just like cheap, chunky, cloudy, aerated, chewable ice. It just didn't exist. Didn't see it anywhere. Yeah, it was great because we were there during a heat wave. So slow melting, super cold ice was definitely a welcome surprise.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you, Alec. So looking there at some aspects of the last 100 years, let's look ahead now to the future. Where do you see the future going for specialty ice? Where do you see this market and also this technology evolving? Alec, let's ask you first, and then we'll go to Cassie.
Oh, it's a great question. I think we're still probably moving towards more shapes that we haven't yet seen much of yet. I think that the ability for people to work with a manufacturer to customize the shape that they're going to get in the machine, not that it would be variable once it's in the field and installed, but the opportunity to get different shapes, I think, is a differentiating factor. I think a continual strive towards improved maintenance and serviceability on these machines is always important. Cassie noted before that for a long time there was really just a couple of companies out there that were doing any kind of specialty ice other than giant large blocks. But in terms of smaller, typical square cubes, there weren't very many, and historically they were terrible on maintenance. We would have to put 2 or 3 of these into an operation so that we could keep one of them running at any given time. Parts were hard to get. Now there's a much broader marketplace for it, so more manufacturers have gotten in, and the machines have had a lot of money and R&D put towards them to make them better, which is great for consumers, great for operators.
Excellent stuff, Alec. Thank you. Cassie, same question to you too, please.
Yeah, so many things that we've talked about here, things we could do that would be really innovative. Talk about like flavored ice. Coffee ice is one thing that always comes up, or adding things to ice, different fruits and things like that to complement beverages. It shapes, I think, is a great one as well. We see overseas they do have a lot of other different shapes that we just haven't had here yet. So I think being able to customize that, or I know like some of the larger brands, want, ice in their brand, things like that. And then finally, I think one of the things that could really move the industry would be, the ultimate, best thing we could do is a completely self-cleaning ice machine. So something that would never, ever have to be cleaned.
Fantastic. What a future. Well, listen, on that note, we'll have to leave things there, but thank you. It's been an outstanding discussion. It's covered a huge amount of ground. I'd like to thank Manitowoc and Pentair for their support, and to thank each of our panelists for taking the time and giving us the benefit of their experience. So thank you, Cassie. Thank you, Alec. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to fcsi.org for more roundtables in the future. Thank you.